Welcome to Behind the Warrior, a podcast presented by the EOD Warrior Foundation. This series will focus on resources, interviews, and topics impacting EOD warriors, their families, and the military community at large.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Behind the Warrior podcast. I'm your host, Maria Schabla, and today we are very excited to be speaking with retired Army Major General and host of the Transition Series, Lessons Learned, A Path to Increase Your Success, Randy Manner. Welcome to the podcast, Randy.
Well, Maria, I am ecstatic to be here, and we'll see how this all goes. I'm looking forward to it.
Great, me too. So, Randy, I always like to start from the beginning. Can you tell us about yourself? Where did you grow up, and what was your childhood like?
Oh, my goodness. This sounds like one of those short stories. It's a long story, so I'll try to keep it just a minute or two. So, it's always important to say, look, my dad was in the military. And so that means we moved around a lot, went to 11 different schools in 12 years, was around military posts from, since I can remember, is the best way to phrase it. I mean, we have pictures of me standing on old M48 tanks. My dad was armored to begin with, and then transitioned to quartermaster, among other things, logistics. And so moved around a lot, was around the military a lot. It was kind of like, it was an awesome experience growing up. So for any of the people watching this who grew up that way as their childhood, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And for those who didn't as a child, they'll kind of go, oh, okay, whatever. But needless to say, it was exciting going around the United States and also around the world.
Mm-hmm. Where were you actually born?
I was born in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
But then that was real quick, uprooted and moved. And I think Fort Lee, of course, now it's changed names, of course, but then onward from there. So went to or was it Fort Knox? Anyway, I can't even remember. I have to sit down and figure out the sequencing because that was when I was like, I had no idea what I was doing, right? 2 years old. Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I can relate. I was an Air Force brat, so we traveled a lot too. So where did your dad end up retiring?
That's exactly right.
Where did your dad retire?
So he retired out of the Pentagon. So let's see, I'm trying to think what rank I was. I think I was a captain at the time when he retired. So he had a 30-year career as a logistician and responsible for all kinds of logistics units from obviously supply and service to transportation to EOD. A lot of those were put together. And that was really the first time that I came across what was EOD. And it's kind of funny to even say that. I guess I was 8, 9, or 10. So it's kind of young in the big scheme of things to say, hey, an 8 or 9-year-old knows what EOD is. But yeah, I did. Now, when I say that, I didn't have a broad understanding. I just knew they did the dangerous work with handling, diffusing, dealing with munitions, so on and so on. So I had a big picture of them even as a young child. Yes.
Yeah. Well, but you come from a long line of military service members. Can you tell us about that?
So my dad, 30 years, he entered service after Korea. So he wasn't in Korea, but he was in Vietnam. Then my grandfather was in the Navy at the tail end of World War II. And then I can even go back as far as I have an uncle who unfortunately died in combat in the Civil War. He was in the Army from a Pennsylvania unit. And he actually died. He was in a battle in Virginia, and then he died in a hospital in Washington, D.C., of all things. And so we have all of the records to include letters he wrote home that my aunt saved, as well as we actually have the documents of when they inventoried all of his belongings to send home with the body. I have all those letters that were sent by the captain there and so on. It's just, well, anyway, so long time.
That's incredible, Randy.
Yes.
Wow. So can you tell us about your decision to join the military?
So if there was such a thing as a decision, it's more like going into the family business. For those of the people that are listening to this and they grew up in some part of the United States and they just naturally evolved into whatever their mom or dad was doing, that's kind of the way that I did it. my mom and dad had infused in me this concept of public service. And so the idea of continuing to serve to help others, whether it was defending the country or helping to lead men and women, both in peacetime and hopefully not, but in wartime, then that makes complete sense to me even then. And that's what I chose to do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So how old were you when you enlisted?
Well, I actually was in ROTC. I went to Penn State for ROTC in computer science. And then I was commissioned as second lieutenant and then went immediately, it's called now Fort. Oh, wait, this is embarrassing. I got to have all my names down. The old thing called Fort Benning. It was my first station that I went to. Yes.
So, Randy.
And then one other comment, I guess, is that I have a son and a daughter, and our son did decide to go into the Air Force to be a pilot. He was a search and rescue pilot with the Air Force. So the guys that he was a pilot with an HC-130, but then he had Blackhawks assigned to him as well as pararescue Air Force personnel. He was in both Afghanistan as well as serving in Africa for the Middle East. And he did I think it was almost 22 years of service. So he also continued the family business, should we say.
That's awesome. So you had mentioned that your dad was still on active duty when you were active duty.
Yes,
that
I was.
Your careers overlapped. Did you work with each other in any way?
Oh, no, we did not. And that's the way it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to work in the chain of command to whoever. It's rare that ever happens, but no, we didn't. And he was much more senior and I was much more junior. So, but good question, but no.
Okay, awesome. So can you tell us some of the highlights from your career?
So I tell you what, first of all, I have a very unusual military career. So for those of you who are listening, whether you were one term with the EOD or perhaps you're someone who supports the field and the soldiers and the airmen, the Marines, the sailors, the men and women in EOD, maybe you can relate to parts of these stories. So I did 10 years of active duty time, regular Army officer, 82nd Airborne, jump out airplanes, do all that stuff, Airborne Ranger, Pathfinder, Jump Master, blah, 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 all the things you do as a young officer. Then I went to grad school at the University of Pennsylvania to the Wharton School for an MBA in Decision Sciences. And then I was a technical person, operations research and systems analysis. And that's completely alien to infantry and logistics. And unfortunately, I'll never forget, I had 3 back-to-back technical tours. And the way it was supposed to be was, hey, you'll be able to switch back and forth from your dealing with soldiers, which I loved, and then dealing with, quite bluntly, data and computers, which, I could do it, which is scary, but it wasn't fun, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the Army said, I'll never forget, I called to complain. Hey, you've 3 back-to-back tours. No, this is not what I signed up for. Mm-hmm. And he said, hey there, Captain, I can get an infantry guy a dime a dozen. I can't get a technical guy like you with computer science and operations research. So you're going to go where the Army tells you. Well, I no longer had an obligation. So I told the Army I was done. So that was it. So I left the Army at 10 years. And then I immediately, literally the next day, joined the Virginia Army National Guard. And I was overjoyed to be part of the 29th Infantry Division, headquartered at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, with units in all around the state, plus Maryland. And that was exciting. And I was a citizen soldier. And I was, at least on weekends, I was doing what I really felt was awesome. I was part-time. I was not a full-time guardsman. I was a part-time traditional guardsman. Mm-hmm. And then I joined one single company doing international IT development and consulting, IT meaning information technology, and did that for 16 years. And then in my time in the 29th, I also did a job as assistant G3 of the division, G3. I was an S3 in a battalion. I was a battalion commander, took a battalion through JRTC. That was awesome and exciting, especially as a National Guard unit. Then 9/11 happened. and I was recalled to active duty. And literally, I was the commander of a unit in the DC Guard whose mission was to support the Army Operations Center. And literally, from my 12th floor of my office building out in Reston, Virginia, I could see the smoke rising over the Pentagon, and immediately that's when we knew this was no longer an accident. What happened in New York, it was we were under attack. We didn't know what, how, or whatever, but it was bad. So I immediately started calling the unit together, and we literally had a couple of people that were serving in the Pentagon on that day because they do a rotational annual training. And so we showed up about 4 days later, the Pentagon still smoldering, of course, and we were on the first activation order to go back to the Pentagon. Did that for that period of time for our mobilization, and they cherry picked many of us to serve because they were in desperate need of people, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. And they offered me a job working on the chairman's staff as a colonel at the time. And I said, "That sounds great." Got promoted after 3 years to 1-star, and I was the deputy operations officer for the Army down in the G3 of the Army. And then I was also the acting ops officer for the Army. Got promoted again and went off to be the deputy director and then the acting director for 6 months of the Defense Threat Reduction Agency at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, responsible for, among many things, safeguarding our nuclear weapons, our chemical weapons, which thank God they're gone. That's awesome. Hosting the Russians when they would come over at the time under our treaties to inspect our nuclear facilities, some of them, as well as for us to go over there. And also we did prophylactic measures for vaccines, anticipating if the bad guys were ever to have something that they would use against us, that we would have at least research in different dimensions to be able to counter it much more rapidly than if we did otherwise. And then they called me one day and said, "Hey, you got to go to Iraq and Kuwait." So I was the deputy commanding general of 3rd Army headquartered in Kuwait, responsible for Army forces in the Middle East. And then did that for a while. And then my last assignment was actually a National Guard position, which was the first one ever in my career. I was the acting vice chief of the National Guard Bureau, the number 2 person, because they had elevated the chief of the National Guard to a 4-star, but they were still trying to figure out how to make the deputy a 3-star. And because I had had several assignments on the Joint Staff and other places, the Department of Defense, as well as Army, they pulled me in to do that job. And then I retired in the end of the year of 2012. And so that's my military career. That I know that was more than just 2 minutes, but that's my background.
Wow, what a career you've had. That is incredible, Randy.
It was fun. I'd do it again.
Wow. I love how strong-willed you were. You were like, I want to do this infantry stuff, and if I can't, bye.
Right. Yeah, well, I mean, life's too short. You only live once.
Amen to that. Amen. So, yes. Randy, can you tell us about your work with EOD?
So, let's see. As I mentioned, I was oriented to understand what EOD soldiers at the time did, even less than 10 years old. And I'd been around EOD people because obviously in those days, you'd visit Dad at the office occasionally, and you could walk around much differently than perhaps today. I mean, as a young kid, well, things were a lot different then. Let's just say that. So that's when I gained this appreciation that, wow, these guys are special. I mean, I knew it. I could feel it right away. More importantly, as active duty, I had a warrant officer in the 82nd responsible for division ammunition. They reported to me. And we worked with EOD people on a regular, if not daily, certainly weekly basis at the minimum. So I was interacting with EOD people, not reporting directly to me, but on a daily to weekly basis. And I got to appreciate them even more. And then fast forward through time, obviously working with EOD units in various capacities, both at battalion level when I was battalion commander, that would have them assigned to me, or whenever it would be in the G3 of the 29th, and then of course on active duty. when I was the deputy director of current ops, I had this outstanding colonel that was EOD, and he gave me the Kool-Aid that says, "Let me tell you how wonderful EOD is." And of course, one sip of the Kool-Aid and I was sold. So I've been an advocate of EOD ever since that time. And we still work together on the Hill to support EOD activities. In fact, also, I'm not sure if you see my shirt, the EOD Association and everywhere
Very
else.
nice.
So, and obviously helping as an honorary member of the EOD Warrior board as well. So whenever I'm asked if I'm available at all, I definitely want to support the program. So, and of course, being an honorary member of the board, periodically I'm asked to do certain things or participate in various events, which I gladly do whenever I can.
Yes, yes. And really, we appreciate your support so much, Randy. And that's actually the reason that we're here for this interview today, is because of your tremendous support in helping EOD techs and their families to transition out of the military. So before we get into that, can you tell us about your own transition out of the military?
Sure. So now please understand, for everybody who's listening to this, that transition as a general officer is totally different than transition as an E4 or E6 or O3 or O5 on some dimensions. At the same time, it's identical. Mm-hmm. And if you listen to any of the sessions, you're going to see it doesn't matter what rank you are when you get out. You still have to know things like, what do I want to do? Where do I want to live? How do I figure this out? If I'm married, how do I interact with my spouse on deciding these factors and working together? If I'm not married, do I have any other mitigating factors about I want to live in this state, or I don't want to live in this state, or I want to live only in this part of the country or not that part of the country, or I want to live in a city, or I want to live in a rural area. I mean, what are the basic parameters you have to consider are identical no matter what rank you are. And that included me as a flag officer. For me, I knew that one thing, I did not want to work for a defense contractor. Nothing against all those great people that do. That's wonderful. But for me, I was done. I did not want to be one of those general officers that was hired back as a advisor consultant to get new business for that company, because you're serving the company, not necessarily the citizens of the United States. Mm-hmm. And so I said, no, nothing to the government. I'm not going to be a DoD civilian or an Army civilian. I'm done. I'll volunteer to help military members, which I do in many capacities, but not directly. That door is closed. At the same time, there are attributes of being in the military, no matter what rank you are, that are directly transferable to the civilian market. And one of them is the concept of leadership. And so after talking to a couple of mentors that I had, they, quite frankly, exposed me to this thing called leadership or executive coaching, which I kind of heard of, but not really. I didn't know what it was. Like, oh yeah, I coach people, even in the military. And every military person does coach other people. At the same time, there is a discipline with training and processes and procedures to be what in the marketplace is now called leadership coaching or executive coaching. So I went to Georgetown, used some of my GI Bill to go to Georgetown University to pick up a postgraduate certificate in leadership coaching right after I retired. And then I joined a company called Korn Ferry. Korn Ferry is the largest human capital company in the world. It's predominantly known for its search of senior executives, but it gains most of its revenue from leadership development and working with companies to increase the quality of the people they already have, in addition to finding and placing key executives. So I did that for a couple of years, loved it, learned a lot, and decided, I didn't like being on the road so much. And some clients I really wasn't too excited about. So I left them and started my own LLC. I have a couple of people who work with me when the jobs require more than just my own capability to do it. So I work with companies like DuPont, with USAA, with Standard & Poor's, with Walmart, a host of companies between the $100 million to $1 billion size, and with their senior leaders, their C-suite officers, to help them at the top of the pyramid in their company to increase their leadership capability. Yes, of course, it's going to help increase their profitability, but equally as important, it's going to increase the opportunities and the quality of life for the people that work for them. Mm-hmm. So that is what drives me today, is working for these companies to help senior leaders to be more effective leaders than they are right now. And that's what I do literally on an ongoing basis, and still working for a full time, which I love. My wife doesn't quite love it as much because of the flexibility. She wants to visit the grandchildren, so we work it out, obviously. Because the nice thing about working for yourself is you can plan these times, so that's good too. So that's the story since that time.
Wow, Randy. So, obviously you have such a considerable wealth of knowledge on the military life and then in leadership development. And so it just was an incredible opportunity for us to work together to create this transition series. So can you tell the listeners, what is a transition series?
Okay. So the very cool thing is it's 10 segments. Some vary 7 or 8 minutes, some are 15 or 16 minutes long. In other words, we're not going to bore you to death, I hope, all right? And it's not going to be death by PowerPoint. There'll be a couple of little flash up here or there, but that's not the point. It's an interview where I'm being asked questions and I answer them. And I broke it down, together with your help, of course, into 10 segments that you kind of start with the first segment, which is kind of an introduction to myself and to what the series is. And then you move through each of these sessions. You do them when you want. You could binge watch them, but that would be horrible. Just kidding. You want to do it a little bit at a time. And in fact, it's going to be better for you if you actually do watch them, on a regular basis, once a week or once every couple of days, based on how fast you want to get through the series. So it's all about taking the process of transition and breaking it down into digestible bits and pieces and approaching it. I'm sure many of the things you have already heard when you went to your TAP course, your transition course out of the military, no matter what rank you are, you're going to have heard bits and pieces. I'm hoping the way I'm presenting it is vividly different, and I hope better for you and more doable for you than, quite frankly, here's death by PowerPoint and see ya, have a good life. Mm-hmm. So that's the concept of it, is breaking down this monster called transition planning. And even if you already transitioned, I encourage you that if you're looking at another opportunity, another way to pursue your next phase of life or a new job, listen to these anyway, because it might give you some great tidbits or takeaways that you can be happier, more successful, more rapidly because you listen to them than if you just tried purely to do it on your own, because you're not alone.
So Randy, I had the honor of working with you on this project, and I have to say that one thing that really jumped out at me is that this series has something for everyone. Not just the EOD tech, but their spouses, their children, yes. Somebody who's in the military, looking at getting out, somebody that's out and has been out for several years. It was just really incredible. I feel like personally, everyone can benefit from this series. So I'm so excited about that.
Yes. So I have to absolutely agree with you. This is not just for EOD techs. Mm-hmm. It's for your spouse. It could be for your mom or your dad. It could be for your kids if they're looking for a job, or whether it's after high school or after college, or anyone along the way that is looking for a new opportunity. Now, it's important to acknowledge that many of the things that I refer to do refer to the military. Mm-hmm. At the same time, 75% of it is not. They're just general concepts that apply to anyone. So please understand that if you refer to someone and say, well, I'm not an EOD tech, or I'm not in the Navy. Well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's still going to be of value to you to spend some time. It's funny. If you look at these sessions as like you're looking for gold, because not every single sentence I say is going to be a golden nugget, but I'm going to guarantee you in every session, there are 2, 3, or 4 literally golden nuggets. You're going to go, crap, I didn't think about that. I'm writing that one down. That's what you should be looking at these for, is not to dwell on every word, because you'll be brain dead. Don't do that. Instead, just say, I know there's some gold in here. Let me listen to it and figure out which ones apply to me. Because what I find is gold may not be for you. And in reverse, you may listen to it and go, wow, that point is very important. And I'm going, oh, I didn't think that was that important. So it's important. It is important just to go ahead and listen. And maybe it's on background or something. But if you are looking to transition, you're looking to look at a new opportunity for anyone, I do encourage you to invest some time in yourself by listening to these series.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely self-development. And I think one of my favorite exercises, and I do want to make the point that this is a series that you developed, but you had an exercise called the lever exercise, which I love. And I was hoping that you could tell our listeners about that exercise.
Okay. So one of the things that it's so funny. You start with, people say, well, how do I find a job? How do I write a resume? It's like, no. Let's back up. Because remember, a resume, not only in fact, just for a comment, people start writing their resume right away. I got to write my resume. Baloney. The resume is not critical at all, guys. It's not, guys, meaning men and women. What's far more important is to understand what's important to you. And if you're married, what's important to you and your spouse. And if you have kids that are at home, what's important to you, your spouse, and your kids, or any combination thereof. Because if you don't understand that first, which is where the lever exercise comes in, then you know what? That resume is worthless, because you might be writing a resume for something that you really don't want to do. So I stepped back. And by the way, I've worked with literally a few thousand members of the military, with both in groups of even up to 100, 150 people, or as small as one-on-one, to help them to go through the transition process. So this is the result of having worked with those few thousand soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and Coast Guardsmen, and a few spouses thrown in as well. This lever exercise is basically saying, now, by the way, I'm going to refer way back to a classic horror movie, 1931 of all things, almost 100 years old, called Frankenstein. And in Dr. Frankenstein's lab, there's all these electronic devices, and there's all these levers all over the place, levers that go up and down. And so I said, that's what it is. Because I love the movie Frankenstein. It's not my favorite one, but I love it because it's so classic. Anyway, so the concept of levers is, first of all, you have a lever that is something important. For example, a lever would be the kind of work I want to do, or the reverse, the kind of work I don't want to do. It could be the compensation or salary I'm looking for. It could be, where do I want to live? Each of these, by the way, are levers. It could be, I only want to live in a city, or I will live anywhere but a city, because you can reverse them, obviously. It could be, I need to have at least 3 weeks of annual leave, let's say, or vacation time. Or it could be that I only want to live on the East Coast, or the South, or the North, or I want to live overseas, whatever it might be. So the concept is, number one, identify each of these levers, each of these things in your life that are important to you. The average person comes up with between 10 and 15 levers to describe what is important to them. The second step is to then define, like a lever would be compensation. Compensation is important to me. So then you have to say, how important is it to you? Is it very important? In other words, the lever is high, or is it medium? So high, or is it medium, or is it low? Now, the way that you have to assign these high, medium, and low, because not everything can be high. Let's say you come up with, just to make it easy for the math, 12 levers, 12 different things that are important to you. You have to divide it by three, that's because 3 groups, high, medium, and low. And then you're limited to only have 4 highs, 4 medium levers, and 4 low. And you're going to, I can't do it. Say, too bad, just figure it out. Because I'm going to force you to literally say, what is most important to you? What is, it's pretty important to me. And then not the other one, never say not important, say just less important. I say again, less important. Then what you do is you set it aside, and then you go to your spouse if you have one, and you say, what's important to you? Meaning, what are the levers that are important to you? Describe the exercise, give some examples, and have him or her also do the same exercise. Come up with the 12, or not 12, 10 to 15, 20 levers. One guy came up with 27 levers. It's like, 20, there's 20. I never saw this that long. But anyway, but by the way, 3 or 4 will not cut it. Everyone's got to have more than 10. Okay. Anyway, and then once he or she does it and assigns the high, medium, and low, you sit together and the ones where you're synced up, good to go. And when you're not synced up, you talk about it. If you've got young kids, you might want to do it when they're asleep or something, or over a beer or a glass of wine, because it could get into some serious discussions. Like one person could say, I want to live near my family. And the other person says, I don't want to live near your family. Okay. This is important for y'all to talk it through.
Yeah.
Because heaven forbid you get the job either near the family or not near the family, it's not going to work. So by working it out with your spouse, you're going to understand each other much better and understand, okay, we come to agreement. These are our 4 high ones, our 4 medium ones, and our 4 lower ones. That is going to be the basis for you, the foundation for you then to launch your, what do I want to do? Where do I want to work? Compensation level, and so on. And by the way, the session that's about the levers goes into a lot more detail than I just did, but I just gave you the big picture. The objective of doing the lever exercise is for you to personally understand what's important to you and less important, and to have your spouse, if you have one, to work with him or her, or girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it might be, to come to agreement and mutual understanding, so that wherever you go, wherever you pursue, the kind of work, the amount of time off you have, your commute time, where you live or don't live, that you are much more in sync than if you just unilaterally started making decisions, which never quite works.
Yeah, you're so right. Well, I know I can't wait to do that exercise myself. So Randy, what is your hope that people will get out of watching this series?
Well, first of all, I want to give people hope. I want to give people confidence they can do this. It's not just about getting income, although that certainly is an important one. It's being happy. And I believe that if you listen and do the exercises that I'm suggesting in this process, that you will be, I'm not going to guarantee happiness. I mean, it's not like I have some, Tinkerbell pixie dust stuff. I don't. I'm just going to tell you that if you go through these exercises, you will be happier than if you did not, and you'll be more successful otherwise, and it's going to happen more rapidly than if you did not do these exercises. So in other words, I'm going to guarantee wherever you are, do this, you are going to be happier, you are going to be more successful more rapidly. Okay. So there you go. I'm putting it down on the table.
Awesome. I love it. So what is your biggest piece of advice that you could give somebody who's either transitioning out of the military right now or looking for a new opportunity?
Okay. I thought about this one. And there's really 4 messages that I want to convey to you in summary about advice, because obviously 10 episodes, let's say it's an average of 10 minutes apiece, maybe 100 minutes of discussion. If not, maybe it's a little bit more over the entire series. But I'm going to reduce it to 4 sentences. Number 1, you are not alone. Mm. You're not alone. Number 2, breathe deep when you get frustrated. Breathe and pause and breathe and move forward one step at a time. Number 3, identify no less than 5 accountability techniques to hold yourself accountable to do what you say you're going to do for your job search. Otherwise, you'll never get it done. And you'll say accountability techniques. Don't worry. I'm just looking through my little list here. Accountability techniques. Where is that? Oh, heck, I can't remember, but it's in one of the episodes, okay? With specific examples. And number 4, and this is very, very important, be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up. Don't say you can't do it, because you can do it. You can do it. Look at all the stuff you've already done in the military. And you say, yeah, but they all told me what to do. Well, true, but they gave you the seeds of leadership for you to be able to do it yourself. So the 4 sentences, again, you're not alone. There are so many resources available to you through this foundation, as well as through the VA and so many other sources. Number 2, you've got to breathe, pause, breathe. Whenever you get frustrated or you feel depressed about it, move forward one step at a time. My mom told me when I was little, when I would get frustrated about something not moving fast enough or not knowing what to do, she would tell me, inch by inch, life's a cinch. Yard by yard, life can be hard. So if you try to do it all at once in your head, you'll never get started and you'll be frustrated and angry, potentially, or worse. But if you break it down into little pieces, which is what we tried to do in these episodes, you can do it. So inch by inch, life's a cinch. Yard by yard, life can be hard. The third one, again, identify no less than 5 accountability techniques. Things like, putting reminders in your phone every single day that say, hey, do my job search. Every single day at 8 a.m. it pops up on your phone. Doing Post-it notes every single day that you've got on your bathroom mirror that says, call contacts or reach out to 3 new people today, or tape it in your truck dash or your car dash, or, I don't care, whatever, or schedule it on your Outlook if you use that, or tell your friends you're going to do this, because if you tell others, hey, I'm doing this, they're going to go, how's it going? And I haven't done anything yet. Well, then what's the problem here? So you tell other people to kick you in the butt. Okay. Go get a buddy that's also going through the job search, or that has gone through the job search. What I'm trying to get at here is accountability techniques at no less than 5. If you can get 10 of those, and by the way, you're going to ask, wait a minute, such thing as too many accountability techniques? Here's the measure about accountability techniques. If you have too many. If you have too many, it's when you're aggravated and pissed off every single time the reminder comes up. If you don't even think about it at all, you don't have enough accountability techniques. It's somewhere between getting irritated and then, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm not doing my work. Somewhere in that range is the number you should have. So that's an easy measure. If you're doing too many, it's like, I got to back off a little bit. If I'm not doing my work, I got to up it. And how do I come up with additional accountability techniques, which are also in the episode? Google top 10 ways to hold myself accountable. Google it, top 10 ways, and then just look through them, and you're going to find 80% of them don't work for you, but you're going to find those little golden nuggets, 1 or 2 that work for you. So those are the 4 messages I would have.
Wow, Randy, thank you so much. That's just incredible advice. So I wanted to ask, what projects are you working on now, and what's on the horizon for you?
Okay, so this one, I obviously am continuing the executive coaching and leadership development for large and medium-sized companies. So that's what I'm doing on the the personal front, and then obviously visiting grandchildren and gardening and doing things like that, which I love doing. The third thing I'm doing in this, I'm just going to be right up front. I think protecting our democracy is important. The rule of law is important. So I'm working with so far about 800 generals, admirals, retired by the way, generals, admirals, and ambassadors to ensure that the rule of law continues in our country, and that we don't have people that believe that they're above the law or the law does not apply to them. So I am involved in many programs to ensure that I can stare at my children and my grandchildren and say the rule of law, where everyone is treated equally and fairly, will continue. So this is what drives me right now. And I know that may not sit well with some of the people watching this, but I believe that the rule of law is one important aspect of what makes America wonderful. And I'm going to push hard to ensure that our political leaders are not above the law. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Wow, Randy. Wow. And I don't know how in the world you found the time in between everything that you do to create this series. So we are extremely grateful for the opportunity, and to give this gift to our community is just really, really unbelievable. So I just want to thank you for taking the time today to do this podcast interview, and just for really everything that you're doing for America.
Well, you're very welcome. And I've always got time for soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen and their families. So I appreciate you guys asking, and I'm glad we were able to make it all work.
Me too. So Randy, we're going to end our interview as our tradition with asking you a couple of your favorite things.
Okay.
So the first one is, what is your favorite movie? Or did we already go over that?
No. We didn't. No.
Okay.
That other movie was not, that was a great movie, Frankenstein, but that's not my favorite movie.
Okay.
So my favorite movie, I love movies, but my favorite movie is It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart. The story about this man, this young man who is working hard and working diligently, and then feels at some point that his life is not worth living. He has nothing to live for. He's lost all hope. And then it's all about, quite frankly, where, as we know, Jimmy Stewart sees what life would be. What would the world be without him if he had not lived in it? And I think this whole concept of life is worth living resonates with me ever since the first time I saw the movie when I was 5 or 6 years old. I watch it regularly, and it's truly a sign of hope, not only for every single American, but particularly for our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines, and Coast Guardmen, that might be suffering from depression. It is something where, hey, that movie says it all. It is a better world with you in it, and there are so many resources to help you to pull through it. And please reach out. So that's my most favorite movie.
Wow. Well, I'm going to watch that movie. It's funny, I've never seen it. So
wait.
Let's
Maria, I used to think so much of you. Wait, what? Okay, so Maria, you better watch it. It's a Wonderful Life. It's free anywhere, because it's it's, what do you call it? You have to pay for it. Jimmy Stewart, 1946.
I'm going to watch it. Watch it.
All right.
Okay. Next question. What is your favorite thing to do in your spare time?
Okay, so I'm only thinking of fun things, because I already told you about my work things. So my fun things that I like to do, and I can't do them all the time, is I love building sandcastles when I go to the beach. And the concept there is, a sandcastle is not a sandcastle unless it's about 20 feet wide and about 6 feet tall, with multiple moats and all kinds of turrets and everything else. And I am not somebody that's one of those professionals that really truly does, the things you see on TV. I'm not that good. But I'll tell you, it's always the best castle on the beach, and everyone's always like, wow. So I enjoy doing that. The second thing is gardening. So that's more of a routine thing. I love creating beauty that makes me smile, makes the neighbors smile when they come by the house. And so that's something that, and then obviously creating an environment for pollinators, obviously, because we don't have enough of the right plants, and heaven forbid people use so many pesticides as it is. So just using natural ways to be able to have a great yard and a great area for bugs, quite frankly, and ladybugs, because remember, ladybugs they eat a lot of the bad bugs, right? So
I didn't know that.
Oh, what? Oh yeah, I have ladybugs, and I buy them periodically to replenish the ones that live around the house, and they keep all the aphids and everything else down, and they devour them, and it's just amazing. You never know that a little ladybug is quite a warrior.
Well, I love them. I love them. I knew that they were lucky, right? Aren't they supposed to be lucky?
I don't know about that part, but boy, they sure eat the bad bugs. I'm telling you right now. Okay.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And then the third thing I do, obviously, which I can't do every day because I don't have one in the backyard, is I love going on roller coasters. I have on my wall here pictures of myself, my spouse, my kids, my dad when he was alive, going on roller coasters and taking pictures. You know, we would go on one roller coaster 5-6 times just to get the picture right, because we knew we'd figure out where the camera was, and then we'd all kind of do whatever we were doing as the camera went by, or we went by the camera. And so I love doing roller coasters since I can't jump out of airplanes anymore. So those are the 3 things: building sandcastles, gardening, and going on roller coasters.
That is so fun. Okay, what is your favorite meal?
My favorite meal? That was the easiest question you've asked me. Okay, my favorite meal is apple pie. And you might say,
okay,
meal. Oh yeah, it is a meal. Oh yeah, it is a meal. And by the way, all apple pies are not created equal. 80% of the apple pies I've ever tried, I take one bite and I don't eat the rest. So I'm a little bit finicky. It's got to be really a lot of brown sugar. It's got to be nicely cut apples, not minced too small. It's got to have a nice crust. I mean, I love apple pie. I recently went on a cruise, and my wife knows, okay, what are you going to have for dinner? Apple pie. Because they rarely would serve it, and it was so exceptional. I would have like 3 apple pies, you know.
Wow.
So,
okay. Do you like ice cream with your apple pie, or just straight up? Okay.
Occasionally, but it's only vanilla, and it better be good. You know, high fat content. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm picky about the ice cream too. Why? Hey, remember, you only go around once. So if you're going to eat calories, they better be good ones, right? So anyway.
They better be worth it. Okay.
Yes.
So our last question to end the interview is, what is your favorite inspirational quote?
Okay. So I actually have 2 because one of them drives what I have done all my life, and what I do now. And that's John F. Kennedy's quote about, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. That is my favorite one, that says, hey, suck it up. This is not about you, about what's owed you, because you're not owed crap. Okay. It's all about how are you going to contribute to our country, to our community, to our church, to our neighborhood. What are you going to do to make the world a little better? So that is my number 1. But tied with number 1, not attributable necessarily to anyone, is very simple, 2 words. It's be kind. Too many people, you know, one of the biggest problems in our world today is that the internet is non-attributional. I actually believe that if your personal identity was on every single social media and every single interaction on the net, 80% of the meanness that exists in our country and the world would disappear because, oh wait, people know that I said that? Well, in that same way, be kind is something that I think is very, very important in today's society, where the internet does permit people to be, unfortunately, very mean to each other, where they wouldn't necessarily be the same mean person if they had to have their name associated with it. So be kind is my second quote.
Wow, Randy, thank you so much. What an incredible and inspirational interview this has been. And I'm just honored to have the opportunity.
Well, I'm honored to spend the time with you all. And I hope that all of you that are watching got something out of this. And if nothing else, that you know, please go explore a couple of the episodes. And if you feel it might be something of value to someone else that's in or out of the military, or not even the military at all, please forward them the link to help them a little bit, to help them be a little bit more successful more rapidly.
Yes.
Thank you, Maria.
Awesome. Awesome. Anybody listening, I highly encourage you to listen to this fantastic series. Thank you, Randy,
Great.
and we wish you the very best.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to our Behind the Warrior podcast, brought to you by the EOD Warrior Foundation. The EOD Warrior Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization serving the EOD community by providing financial assistance, scholarships, and providing hope and wellness resources for the active duty, reserve, National Guard, retired, and veteran EOD communities and their families. We also honor our fallen and wounded EOD technicians by maintaining the EOD Memorial and Remembrance Garden. We do all this through the generosity of individual and corporate donors and sponsors. If you would like to assist the foundation or support our Behind the Warrior podcast, click the link on our webpage at eodwarriorfoundation.org or contact us at info@eodwarriorfoundation.org. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to tell a friend. The various opinions, beliefs, and viewpoints expressed by guests, contributors, and participants of the Behind the Warrior podcast are their own and are intended for informational purposes only. They do not necessarily reflect the opinions, beliefs, viewpoints, or policies of the EOD Warrior Foundation or its employees and volunteers.